Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to part number 2 of the calcium reactor. I know a lot of people were really excited when I first released video 1, which you guys can find in the description as well if you look at my recent videos. I think it was then 3-4 videos ago. If you have not checked that out, I highly urge you to check that out because it's going to give you not a detailed explanation, but a pretty good explanation of a calcium reactor, kind of how they work and why they use them. More importantly, why they're one of the best ways to keep stable water parameters in our reef tanks. Quite honestly, how they'll literally be better than 2-part dosing, obviously manual dosing. But yeah, check out that video if you guys have not checked it out. In this video, guys, we're literally getting ready to hook up this calcium reactor to my JBJ 45-gallon tank. So as you guys can see, compared to the other video, we obviously have media. We have a lot of the stuff kind of out of its bags, kind of somewhat assembled, so you can get a better idea of how this is going to work. Now, one thing I do want to talk about, in the last video, you guys mentioned the remag. It wasn't available. Luckily, it came back in stock. Here it is in all of its form and glory. So let me put that away. So that's already been mixed in here to the main chamber. We're going to talk a little bit more detail of how much to use. For you guys wondering the media I am using, the base media is 2 Little Fishies, and obviously as well using their same brand of the magnesium. So what we're going to do right now, guys, I'm going to get a little bit of the stuff out of the way, kind of give you guys a breakdown of how it's going to be all assembled / wired up. The only thing I don't have out of the box is going to be the pH controller. The reason I don't have it, I just don't want to damage the pH probe at this time. I don't want to expose to too much air so it doesn't dry out. It comes shipped in this little container that keeps it hydrated. So I kind of don't want to take it out until it's ready to be set up, which is probably going to be happening in the next few days here on the tank. So before we get on, what I'm going to do, move the stuff out of the way, give you guys a quick rundown of kind of how I went about filling it, so on and so forth. Compared to last week, you guys, or not last week, but last video, you see there's obviously media already in these dual reactors. So if you guys, again, if you're asking why the heck are you running 2 reactors, please go watch the first video. I explain it in a lot more detail. So in this video, I'm not going to explain what I covered already, just because the people that did watch that, I'm pretty sure you don't want to hear it all over again. But we filled it up with media, obviously both of them. You may notice the magnesium is only in this first chamber because the CO2 is going to be quite a bit lower in here than it is in here. So I want to ensure that the full contact of the CO2 is being made in the first chamber, thus better breaking up the magnesium. Now, that's not saying you can't put it here and it won't break down. It will. I just feel it's going to be a lot more effective in the main chamber. One of the things you're going to notice when you are filling up a calcium reactor, you never fill it all the way to the top. The reason you never do is because the probe that goes in here obviously needs a little bit of wiggle room. It needs to be in the water column, water that's actually circulating, so it can measure the pH accurately. Last thing you want to do is have it be obstructed by this media, or worst case scenario, this media somehow contacts it, breaks it, and you got a bigger mess really to deal with. That probably wouldn't happen, but it could happen. So yes, as far as the second chamber, one thing I did do, and it wasn't recommended by anyone, it was just me kind of somewhat thinking logically. Stay with me here. So first of all, for you guys wondering, this is a Vast Marine Works media reactor. This is what I'm be using for the secondary chamber. Now, if you pay close attention, I don't know if you guys are able to see it on the video, but the media is a little bit more crushed than this. You're probably saying, how the hell did that happen? Well, believe it or not, I actually got a hammer out, started crushing the media. Now, my theory behind it, and I'd love for you guys to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but my theory behind it, since the CO2 coming in this chamber is not going to be as low, sorry, not the CO2, since the pH coming in this chamber won't be as low as it is in here, I feel that it would have a harder time breaking up a bigger media. Whereas smaller crushed media, it should do a better job of breaking it up. Now, I may be completely wrong. It may not even matter. Just my theory was if I crush the media in this one a little bit finer, I'll be able to, with the pH coming into this chamber, still have enough power to break it down. More importantly, absorb the low pH. Because the whole goal for a dual chamber reactor, you can certainly get away with one. The problem is this way you tend to avoid the issues with low pH because there's more contact time with the media. My theory was if the media is a little bit finer, it should absorb it better, thus higher pH coming out of here, so we shouldn't have any pH issues. Obviously we're going to find out, but I'd love to hear in the comments what you guys think, if it's a good thing what I did, if it doesn't matter, if I just wasted my time, I don't know. One thing I also did do towards the bottom and the very top, about that much and that much, I put the media that I did not crush. The only reason I did that, I didn't want any falling to the bottom, so that's kind of like a barrier block, same for the top. I don't think I needed to do any of that. It does have a little mesh guard that Vasamarine gives you. That should have been plenty. So now that I look back on it, I'm not going to redo it, but yeah, I probably didn't need to do it. Another thing I want to make aware, and you guys are probably wondering, how much Remag/magnesium pellets do you use? Well, the Remag suggests 10% of your total volume of media. So what I did, I weighed both these medias. I forget the exact weight right now, but I weighed them both and I deducted 10%. I removed that 10% and I put 10% back in the Remag, which are these little white pebbles you're seeing everywhere. That's a good starting point. If your magnesium is still low, you would obviously add more of these magnesium pellets, and then obviously it would stabilize from there. But from reading around, asking around, a lot of people are saying 10-15% is average, and it does a very good job at maintaining that magnesium level. So kind of the next step from here is going to be to hook it up. Now this is that ever famous Kimura pump that everybody's really raving about. Honestly, if you have a calcium reactor, it's very difficult to run one of these without these, because you run into the issues. Check valves are, one, very hard to adjust, two, very easy to clog. Maxi jets, same thing. Over time they build up residue, they don't perform as good. So whatever's the output is from here, if it's not always consistent, same flow, you can see where that's going to become an issue. Slowly your levels are going to be decreasing, and obviously you're going to be like, what the heck's going on? Or you're going to have to come back and adjust it every single time. The beauty of this Kimura peristaltic pump, it's a digital readout. So let's say, for instance, I'm dosing 50 milliliters a minute and my levels are a little bit low. I can turn the knob very easily to 51, 52, whatever number I'm happy with. It makes it very, very easy to see at the glance of an eye, again, because it is a digital readout. So one of the last big players to this is going to be the CO2 tank. Now this CO2 tank is not filled yet. I'll talk about that a little bit, why, but it's not filled yet. I got the regulator here hooked up, kind of seeing how everything's going to work. One thing I do want to talk about, when you're running a calcium reactor, it's recommended that you don't pump CO2 at the beginning. You can, but the reason I'm saying this is you want to make sure all the bubbles are kind of worked out of the media, because obviously bubbles are going to, change a little bit the parameters inside. Won't be as much concentrated CO2, because obviously the air is going to be taking up that space. So you want to run this for about a day to 2 days, just constantly running without pumping any CO2. So next week I'm going to go and fill the CO2, get that ready to go, and yeah, it's going to be pretty simple as far as hooking it up from there. So I don't have everything wired up because, first of all, I don't know what length I need of RODI line. This whole thing is going to be wired with RODI. So in a nutshell, and I hope I don't lose you guys, the way this is going to work, okay? Imagine you guys are going to, this is a pH controller. So whenever you hear me mention it, this is it. So The pH probe is going to go in here, right? It's going to be coming down about 1.5 to 2 inches. Depending on where I program that controller, I'm going to want to maintain, I think it's about 6.4, 6.5 pH in this main reactor. Because again, the meter's in here, so it's only going to be measuring this one. Because if it's too high or too low, it can actually be either good or bad as far as breaking down the media. If it's too high, the media won't break down. If it's too low, it'll turn into a sludge. So there is a fine line of where you need to run it, and that's where the controller comes into play. Now, you may see a power cord, and this is a solenoid. So this is a CO2 tank with a regulator and a solenoid. If at any point the pH dips or either goes too low or too high, depending on where I set my controller, it will either shut off or on this solenoid. When that is either shut on or off, it'll either pump or not pump any CO2 into the tank or into the reactor. And it's very simple as far as hooking this up. It's an RODI line from here to here. And then the input, so you guys are probably wondering, so how the heck is this thing getting water from the main tank? One thing that may be confusing, there is a pump. I don't know if you guys see this big old pump here in the back. It has a power cord. Now this pump, a lot of people I noticed were commenting in another video, why do you need to add a pump if there's already a pump in it? Well, the pump that's on this is only to circulate water within the reactor. That's its only job. It's not to pump water from the tank. It's not to pull water from any other source. This pump's job is only to circulate water within this reactor right here. The reason it's doing that, obviously there's CO2 being pumped in, so it needs to constantly be turning it over, and that's the only job of this pump. So don't believe that if you're hunting for a reactor, because a lot of reactors come with pumps, that pump is going to be what's going to feed it water. That's not the case. That's only to circulate the water. So that's where this bad boy comes into play. So the way this is going to work, it's going to suck water. We're not going to push water, we're going to suck water. And you're probably saying, what the hell does that mean? Well, typically in theory, you would want to pump water from the tank into here, right? And obviously it would come out from here. That's not what we're going to do, at least not with the peristaltic pump. If you do a little bit of reading, you're going to realize if you push water, you run a very high risk of popping a line, because if ever it gets clogged or anything of that sort, this silicone is just going to pop and water is going to go everywhere, and it's not going to be a good day. So the other option to do is you suck water from here. That low pressure that it's going to be creating is automatically going to suck water into here from the tank. So by you taking out water from here, it's automatically going to want to replenish it from the main tank coming into here. So we're going to have a line coming from the tank, an RODI line from the back. It's going to come right into here. And then, so the water is going to come into here. After that, this one right here is going to be connected to the pump, which is this top one. This is the input. It goes like this. So it's going to come into the pump right here. And this output here is going to go all the way back to my sump. Obviously I don't have a sump. It's a all-in-one tank, so you get the idea. But yeah, so it's going to come from here to here, and from here to the tank, and from the tank it's going to be connected to this back one here. So this pump's job is going to be, it's two jobs. It's to suck water from the tank to obviously replenish it here and keep introducing new water. And right after that, it's again dosing it back into the tank, which here I can regulate how many milliliters a minute are going into the tank. So that's kind of where you're going to see part 3 and part 4. A calcium reactor doesn't need to be tuned. You need to tune it because obviously you can underdose, you can overdose. The good thing about calcium reactors, even if you wanted to purposely overdose it, it would take a few days. It's not like a regular doser that the parameters are super elevated, super concentrated of calcium, alkalinity, magnesium. These aren't that elevated, so it takes a lot more if you really wanted to overdose it. That's not saying you couldn't knock out a tank in a day. You absolutely could. But these are a lot more forgiving than your average dosers. They're honestly a lot more safer. So yeah, I'm gonna have to be testing the water. The good thing about a calcium reactor, generally speaking, guys, you only need to test alkalinity. Only because alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium, as well as trace elements, are being fed in balance. And that's the whole reason I'm chasing this. For you guys wondering, why don't you just go with a doser? A doser is not balanced. A doser is dosing whatever you tell each channel to dose. It's not giving it, how do I say that? It's not giving the elements back the way the corals are consuming it. And that's the beauty of a calcium reactor. It replenishes back at the same rate the coral is consuming that specific element, which just makes it so beautiful. It's really the closest way we can replicate Mother Nature. When was the last time you saw dosers hooked up to the ocean? Never, right? All these elements in the ocean are available at any given second of the day. The same thing with the calcium reactor. It's dripping constantly every minute. This doser will never stop. I mean, it will if it messes up, but it should never stop. It'll run 24/7, 365 days a year, nonstop. And you kind of get a glimpse of that's really how you're able to achieve the ultimate stability. So guys, the next video you are going to see is all of this hooked up to the tank. And after that, I think we're going to have another video showing you how to tune and regulate a calcium reactor. Because just to give you guys a glimpse of how that works, hopefully I haven't lost a lot of you guys. Generally speaking, there's two ways to tune a calcium reactor. One way, very simple, increase the flow rate on your pump, right? That's probably the most obvious. The next way you can tune your calcium reactor is adjusting the CO2, even without touching this. By me closing the valve, letting less CO2 into here is gonna increase the pH, thus melt the media slower, thus, shoot, wait, I even got confused there. Wait, so closing this is gonna allow less CO2, which is gonna increase the pH, which is gonna melt the media less, and thus the elements are gonna be lower when they're being dosed back into the tank. And you can imagine the same would apply. If I open this valve, obviously there's a certain threshold, you don't wanna melt it too much, but if I open this to melt the media a lot lower, what's gonna happen, it's gonna increase the rate, thus it's gonna come out in a more concentrated level. And again, all this was being done without even touching this pump here. So I'm gonna teach you guys how to adjust this as well as adjusting this, because it's really a well balanced ballet, if you will. It's a well coordinated dance in between the regulator and this bad boy here. But luckily I'm going to be here to walk you guys through it. And guys, that's going to be it for today. One thing I do want to mention, and I'm actually going to need your guys' help. Okay, so for you guys out there that have calcium reactors, I need you to help me on this. From my understanding is I need a check valve, correct? So the check valve is supposed to be installed after the bubble counter, so the water doesn't come back into the bubble counter. Now, for you guys that have a calcium reactor, or anyone that can answer the question, let me know if I'm correct. I'm supposed to install the check valve after the bubble counter, so it'd be in here, and then from here it goes into here. And the reason for that is so the media won't, or the water won't come back into the bubble counter, or even come in here, pretty much essentially damaging this. So the one I have here, guys, is a John Guest check valve. I'd love to hear in the comments if I'm thinking it correctly, and if this check valve should work. Again, it's a John Guest. So let me know in the comments. Obviously, if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns about anything else, maybe something I didn't cover in this video. I tried my best. Hopefully I didn't ramble too far. And again, guys, just like last video, let me know if you watched till the very end. I want to see you diehard reefers out there. I love the comments you guys are leaving, loving everything. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this content. I know I'm really enjoying this. Having new toys is always a lot of fun. So we're gonna leave this video here, guys. Again, like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below if you stayed to the very end. Let me know if I'm correct with this check valve and how I'm gonna install it. And let me know if you have any questions. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Happy reefing.